So I overheard over here, someone was talking about fast food nation, right? Or was it supersize me? Supersize me, yeah. And that was, it touched off something for me, which reminded me kind of where this all started, which was over 10 years ago. I was just out of college. I got a degree in philosophy. I thought I was going to go to law school. And I got a part-time job driving a truck around, delivering produce to the food co-ops and the grocery stores. And almost immediately I decided I was going to rewrite my entire diet and just change the way that I ate, right? So I blacklisted McDonald's. That was kind of like the first thing I did. I went all vegetarian for a while because I, did a little bit more research and found out, the industrial food system is pretty toxic and pretty disgusting, and especially when you get into meat and the way that the animals are treated. It just, all of a sudden, it didn't jive with who I was, with what I had learned about, being a good citizen and making responsible personal choices. And so I did. So my passion really started. It started from, an experience and a reaction to something. Like, I'm gonna take this experience and I'm gonna try and turn it into my lifelong pursuit, right? Because we're all looking for something that we can do that's meaningful, that gives us a sense of purpose and that we can feel good about, right? I mean, I don't think that, for me, I certainly didn't want to be a truck driver the rest of my life, but I felt really good about the company that I was working for. I felt really good about the customers that I got to interact with on a daily basis. And from there, I said, well, day in and day out, I'm just seeing, I'm seeing pallets and boxes and crates of all of this really healthy food. And I was like, well, I need to see where all this is coming from, right? And that's what led me to check out the farm and see the production side of it and wanting to know more about, about the food that I was seeing every day. And one thing led to another. I ended up, I was biking from Tacoma to my job in Kent a couple days a week. And I was on River Road and I saw, this sign that said Organic Farm. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? There's an organic farm right here in my backyard. I had no idea. So I stop in, it was lunchtime, it was my birthday, right? So I'm it was doing deviating, going out of my traditional routine and doing something different, right? I think it's always good to kind of try and go outside of your comfort zone, right? And so I pull in and it was like I said, it was lunchtime, so it's kind of quiet. There's not a lot of activity going on. So I'm kind of poking my head around, and I come around this one corner, and you can imagine, right? It's it's a really nice, beautiful day out. The sun's shining. It's pastoral. There's all these, plants and the greenhouse has all the little starts in the trays going on, and there's this beautiful woman right in front of me. And, she's mid bite on her hummus sandwich or whatever. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is how it's supposed to be. You're in the Garden of Eden and there's Eden. And she's like, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm looking for a job, I'm out of college. I got nothing else going on other than this part-time gig. Driving a truck, but I'm really interested in finding out more about what's going on here on the farm. And she's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe, come back tomorrow, 8 a.m. or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm probably embellishing this story a little too much. But what really happened that day is I fell in love with this girl, and I ended up marrying her. But I also, at the same time, fell in love with this work, right? I felt that it had all of that meaning and that purpose and that, the fulfillment that I got out of, the next day, just out there in the fields. We were planting corn, and so I'm down there, hunched over, taking the dirt apart with one hand and putting the seeds in with the other hand and going one after another, pretty much as fast as we can to finish planting all this. And then next thing I know, we're out there, with some hand tool and we're weeding some lettuce or something. And then the next week, I'm learning how to drive a tractor. And that's one of our favorite stories to tell. It's like, or for me anyway, is that my wife taught me how to drive a tractor. And so we really started, small, right, in terms of, bootstrapping. I mean, there's, just piecing it together from essentially nothing. We went out and we leased a few acres of land up in Enumclaw, and we started our own little micro farm with chickens, and we had a little farm stand out there, and at the same time, I had seen this model of home delivery, right, where this company out of Seattle called Terra Organics, they were putting these boxes together weekly and delivering them to the neighborhoods in Seattle. And I thought it was a really good model, right? I mean, part of, there's a couple different ways to become an entrepreneur. And you don't necessarily have to have the idea first, but to be able to bring an idea that you see somewhere else into a new market is essentially what we did. But with our own personal touch to it, because we had that connection, right? We were the ones that were not only buying produce from other farms and other regions, but we were growing it ourselves, and we were sending out an email once a week to our customers and saying, hey, this is what we're growing this week, and this is what it costs, and let us know if we can bring you anything. We're not that far removed from the days of like the milkman, right? Who used to come by and drop off the milk at your door every day. But in terms of what the supermarket offers, there is quite a big difference between your one-stop shop with everything under the sun that you can imagine, and the milkman, who's going straight to the dairy and getting the milk fresh and bringing it, to your doorstep. I mean, that's where we started, was trying to close that gap and bring the customer a little bit closer to the source of their own food. It's interesting, like in the material or the announcement, like this talk today, it was billed as betting on the farm, right? And so in a way, like betting on something, like I was betting on this idea and this business model that I thought could make us filthy rich, right? But at the same time, we were betting the farm. I mean, we actually, there's several times as an entrepreneur where you have to, put your skin in the game and take on all that risk, right? And we've, in terms of, of how we measure success, right, is maybe different than the ways that bigger companies, businesses that are actively seeking profits or have investors that have a certain return threshold where they're looking to get 3 times or 5 times their initial investment back in return. A lot of that, wasn't part of our calculus. It was, we're doing something we love. We know we can sustain this. We think that this is a growing, a growing interest in the consumer mindset, and we see a future in this. And we've had certainly a really steep learning curve, right? I mean, like I said, I was 22 years old. I had a philosophy degree, and here I am starting, a business and a farm at the same time, just going for it, right? I mean, I don't think that, I certainly wasn't thinking, okay, what's 2017 going to look like? How big is our company going to be in 2017? Or, how many weeks of vacation? Like, that was something that Tom and I were talking about. I wasn't going into this to make a bunch of money. I didn't think that I was going to be able to take 3 months of vacation a year. So there's some things that, that are knowns, and then you have some unknowns at the same time, and you kind of have to constantly, be checking in on those, right? Like, is this still meaningful? Is this still work that we love to do and that we think can sustain us? And each time so far, we keep coming back for more. I can think of, in the arc of the company and our lives together, at least 3 different times where it's been like a go or no go scenario, right? Where we're like, here's an opportunity before us. It sort of seems like it's fell in our lap, like this, like so much of it is just instinctual, right? You have to just, you have to have that gut check, like again and again and again, to say, we can do this, we can make ends meet. We can provide for ourselves and our kids. We can provide for our employees, right? I mean, there's a certain fortitude, right, that I think most, if not all, entrepreneurs have to find in themselves. Have to test themselves again and again to find out if it's really still there, and if is the candle still burning, or is it extinguished, right? And if, I heard some scary statistic about 70%, 80% of small businesses failing within the first 5 years, right? I mean, that's the reality. I mean, I would like to think that, at this point, 10 years on in this journey, that we're secure, right? And that we aren't going to fail. But there's a farmer in the valley out in Puyallup, and I won't mention him by name, but he's third, fourth generation farmer, and hundreds of acres in production. And I had the chance to meet with him a while back, and we were talking about land use and development pressures and price of farmland and labor and all of these hot button issues and things that are like they're intense. Like there's a lot of issues that farmers are facing, right? And the one thing that scares the both of us more than anything is somebody getting sick, right? We deal in a product that is fresh, oftentimes, right? We both grow lettuce, and we both adhere to some strict standards in terms of food safety and have certification that's that the USDA and the FDA have recently made available for farms that would like to communicate to their buyers that, hey, we're growing in accordance with these food safety standards. But there's any number of scenarios where one head of lettuce or one case of lettuce gets contaminated. Somebody gets sick, and you're pretty much out of business, right? I mean, maybe the insurance is enough. I mean, just not even taking into account the human component of that and the implications of the responsibility that's on our shoulders, because we know that it's potentially, you could have an outbreak, you could have a case of E. coli or something that could be really serious in somebody else's lives. But, that would just, in an instant, kind of wipe us off the map.
So how do you sleep at night?
Tom, we're not doing any cannabis out there. I know. I mean, we missed that bus, right? I mean, I hear prices on that commodity are falling quickly, right? But I just I mean, it's a good question, right? It's a fair question. How do you sleep at night? Well, there's risk. There's inherent risk. I mean, if I'm an Uber driver, and I'm letting passengers get into my car, I sure as hell better be making sure I'm awake and alert and I'm sober and I have insurance on my car and I'm obeying traffic laws and I'm not all of these things, right? These are check boxes. At the end of the day, they do nothing to actually mitigate what we call reality, right? I mean, people are going to get sick from food, and we just hope that it doesn't happen to us. But I bring that up because I think that when you think about going into business for yourself or you want to take this idea and turn it into a profession and kind of your life's purpose, you always have to think about contingencies, right? And have that plan B, plan C, plan D. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in the market, right? I mean, we did not have an Amazon Fresh 10 years ago. And now, one of the biggest companies in the world is competing for a lot of the same customers that we are, right? How are we going to remain relevant, right? What do we have? You continually are adapting and trying to change with the times, to stay ahead of the times. I mean, there's a mentor of mine, or it's like, if you're not busy growing, you're dying, right? I mean, you got to think that you constantly have to evolve and rethink all of your strategies and your products and your offerings I mean, if you had told me even 5 years ago that there would be autonomous vehicles driving around on the city streets in America, and that this little search engine, called Google, was going to be building the cars. I mean, that's crazy, right? Like, but they're not the only ones doing it. I mean, all these companies are like constantly reevaluating, trying to innovate and develop new ideas from within. I mean, that meal kit craze, right? You have these so-called unicorn companies, right, that get a valuation of $1 billion, privately held company like Blue Apron, I mean, that's great. If you're the guy or one of the guys or the gals, that come up with one of these ideas that you can then turn around and sell, or somehow, make your millions and go retire and just and remove yourself from the world, like, that's great. But I mean, if that's your goal, like, that's what you gotta always aim for, right? If you're setting out to, disrupt the market or come up with some new offering or new product that you think that has the potential to do that, then you need to believe that, and put all of your effort into that one idea. But I'm more modest than that. I did not have this idea that I thought was going to make me $1 million or $1 billion, right? It was like, look, there's so many good ideas out there, and there's so many needs and wants that people have, and it's really easy to, I think, like, if you bring your whole self to it, and you test the market, you can prove it because you're able to run with an idea for a while and make however many customers happy based on selling, X product or Y service at this price. That's enough, that's enough to make you, make you happy, make you feel fulfilled. I think that there's, Yeah, there's so many stories out there of success, you know, and like of how to be an entrepreneur, how to do something that you really like doing and want to do that's valuable to people. And you know, ultimately, yeah, you have to be able to test that theory, right? And then just go out and do it, right? So.
What was your theory then? I mean, just because you grow lettuce doesn't mean that everybody wants your lettuce. What did you do to get everybody interested in Terra Organics?
Well, I'm still working on that, right? You know, I mean, organics, you know, again, I mean, this was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago that we started doing this, when it was still you know, I mean, like, if you lived in Seattle, I think that there were a number of stores where you could buy organics. But, you know, we live out in the sticks, out in Ording, right? And there's one grocery store, there's a Safeway out there. And I guarantee you they were not carrying organics, right? At the time, we lived in Enumclaw, and there was a QFC out there, and there was not organics out there. So initially, it was kind of a novelty in something that really, it hadn't gone mainstream yet. It was still lesser known, lesser available, and you know, it was like we weren't trying to just hit people on one idea, right? I mean, it's not like the decision that Safeway had to make to bring organics into the store. I mean, we said, look, we said organic is better, and here's why, right? Then we said convenience. Who doesn't like convenience? We can bring you, you know, your food to your door. And then the third thing we did is we said, you know, look, we're providing a fresher product, more direct to you, and when we can, in season from local farms, right? So it's kind of, you know, this layering that we did, and it's a continual, you know, process to tell the story, to re-educate, to inform, and at the same time, right, you have to uphold and maintain your core, you know, your core values, your core offerings, and not compromise to that. And you know, a lot of what we do is dirty. You know, it's dirty work. I mean, not just from the produce, the production and growing side of things, but you know, the logistics, the warehousing, the delivering, and it requires, you know, a lot of people. There's not a lot of automation that we can bring into the business, and we have to continually scale, you know, different segments of the business to meet the volume, right? I mean, that's how we've remained successful is through growth. And so I mean, it's, you know, you have to be able to grow a certain side of the business, whether it's, you know, putting in a new cooler because the old cooler is too small. Well, you know, I have a bigger cooler. Well, I need more vans to take out, you know, the product that I now have in the cooler, and more drivers, and now my IT systems are falling apart because I got too many customers, or the complexity of, you know, data management is too much on my purchasing department, and so I can't effectively, or, you know, in any sort of streamlined, cohesive way, get enough product into the warehouse at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I think that when we started, so we took, I'll just back up a little bit, a little more of the historical information is we had, as I said, when we started the delivery service, we had this farm that we started at the same time. And that lasted for 3 years, and then we shut down the farm. We moved our operations into Tacoma, and for the next 3 years, just focused on building up our customer base, on refining some of our systems, and really, I was much more focused and hands-on into the, to the day-to-day operations. And in 2009, we had an opportunity that sort of came to us. We weren't necessarily like going out looking for property to buy, and I think in the back of our minds it was always like, we wanted that to be a feature or a component of our business, and we wanted to return to that that life, that space, being in a rural community and being on the land, and that connection that we both had felt with with nature and with the farming, the rhythms of farming. And so we bought an old dairy farm, and it was 100% financed, right? Like there was no skin in the, I mean, there was a lot of skin in the game, but we didn't have to put any money down. It was like the seller was willing to finance part of the sale, and so in my mind, I'm thinking, this is really good. This is from a business growth standpoint. I'm becoming vertically integrated. Not only now can I, not only am I going to be that the logistics guy and dealing with the distribution, but I'm also going to be my own supplier, and I'm going to be able to grow what I was having to buy from other farms, and it wasn't really quite that simple. Fortunately, we had a couple that were great partners with us for the first few years, and they were able to manage the farm side of things, and I was, able to stay more focused on just the distribution side. But then they decided they were going to move on to something else, and so then that fell back into our laps, and we had to, take on a whole nother side of the business that, while related, still has its own set of demands and regulation and employees. I mean, it was a lot to take on.
So how much do you think that your success of your business is attributed to the timing and luck of this whole generation? Because I'm a finance guy, and the millennials, they don't walk anywhere, they don't drive.
Yeah.
Everything's on a computer. So is it based on the new generation, how they can sit in front of a computer and they can have everything delivered to their home or office? Is that the timing aspects of it, you think, that helps out?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's not enough data there. I don't think we've gotten enough from the millennial generation, right? I mean, they're just now like maybe graduating college and maybe have some steady income, and I think that there's the grocery store model is still dominant. I mean, that is still, our biggest competitor, right? But I think that, while we've seen organics rise at a steady rate, every year for the last decade, we still haven't seen, we're just scratching the surface in terms of models that can disrupt the grocery store side of things, right? Be it Amazon Fresh or Blue Apron that's doing the meal kits, that's trying to, it's trying to make it easier and convenient and packaged, really nicely and make everybody this great chef, right? Or Instacart, right? The idea that you're gonna this sharing community, and you're gonna have somebody who just goes to your grocery store and picks up your food and brings it to your house. But no, I think that the success of our business is only related to a quality product, to outstanding customer service, and word of mouth, and being able to rely on happy customers, to then go around and tell their friends.
I think I must have missed when you were describing your businesses. You don't sell to grocery stores, right? You just sell the produce directly to customers.
Yes.
You mostly do distribution, not growing produce, right? You're mostly a distributor.
So the farm side of the business does grow for both wholesale, supermarkets and restaurants, and then the Terra Organics face of the business is really the direct-to-consumer business, but it also handles the logistics and delivery aspect for the farm. So we do, a small amount of our overall business is in the wholesale, the business-to-business side, but most of it is business to consumer.
And what's your geographic area for distribution you produce?
It's most of King, Pierce, and Thurston counties.
And who is your demographic for your clients mostly? Younger people, older people, males, females?
Well, most households, the females are making the purchasing, the food purchasing decisions. Oftentimes there's kids in the house, and that's why they're maybe making that switch over to organics. In terms of, in ages, age range, it's all over the place right now. We're pretty well distributed between young, new families and older, stay at home. I really like having this food delivered to me. There's access issues there too. We're trying, a few years ago we got into the USDA SNAP program, or the food stamps, right? So that we could do one more thing to kind of address that social equity piece, and try and make it more accessible to folks that are either that have limited income or a disability of some sort, that where they really value that service of us coming to to them.
And how are you getting new customers? How are they finding out about you?
Referral based. Our existing customers account for a lot of our new customers, and then that's obviously changed a lot. But we've found, trying to have a good online reputation. We have a good reputation, right? If anyone's searching for a service like this, where farm to table, or home delivery produce, or community supported agriculture, farm share, these are search phrases, right, that people are going to type in, and they may see either just organically our business, come up, or we'll do some pay-per-click advertising in order to put our name up there in the front.
Have you found that social media advertisement pays off for you, like Facebook, for example, or maybe Instagram, Snapchat? Have you tried those venues?
Yeah, I mean, it pays for us, when we get customers out of the deal. I mean, it's really hard to, it's hard to measure that, I mean, I think that, again, if it takes a customer, or a consumer, I should say, if it takes a consumer, 5 times of hearing about something or the name of a business before they actually make a purchasing decision, then yeah, it's certainly important for us to have a presence, I mean, we have to go through those channels and be out there. But I don't, I guess in answer to your question, we don't have a really good system of tracking, okay, where did they find out about us? And then, yeah.
So how do you decide on where to put your marketing dollars? How do you decide what kind of advertisements you get the most bang out of?
I have a dartboard in my office, and I throw darts every Friday. No, I mean, in a way, it's like, if there's a lot of ways that you can reinvest in your business, right? And profits, there's not profit taking. I mean, at least in farming, you don't have a great year and then go to Vegas or, spend a month in Europe or whatever, other people might do that have a lot of money, a lot of success in a given year, a given cycle. That money is going back into equipment, right? Or marketing, right? I'm going to take that money and I'm going to say, okay, well, this month, I have X to spend, right? And I'm going to, I'm figuring it out as I go. I mean, there's, I think that if, for a business like ours, I think that that the thing that's most important is for people to know that we're out there and the core offering, exactly like what it is that we do. And so I have to somehow get that message in front of people. And I don't think that direct mailing, to a zip code in the north end of Tacoma is going to yield me the best results. I don't think that, I don't think print, I mean, I don't need to cast a big wide net. I need to cast 100 or 1,000 little tiny nets and just reach, your eyeballs if that's something that you're going to be looking for, or, I mean, it's, yeah. Yes.
I've been reading a tax book, and I noticed how beneficial it is to start your own business.
Yeah.
Huge write-offs.
Yeah.
And huge deductions, but I mean, there's a lot, and it takes a lot of reading and a lot of educating. How do you do that with your business? Do you hire a CPA or?
No, I mean, like you, I think that I've found most of the information that I need from various books or resources. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the benefit of all of these tax write-offs is at some point you need to be able to show profitability. You know, you can deduct a lot of expenses and accelerate depreciation on a lot of assets, but when you go to a bank and you're seeking additional financing, you know, they really want to see that you've made some profits along the way, right? And so that's a balancing act that I think only recently did I start to kind of appreciate that a little bit more.
And to have write-offs, you have to have profits. If
You
you
have-
have profit, you can't really write off anything because
Yes.
you have profit.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Well, you can just expense it. It's okay. Well, not if I don't have a positive cash flow this month. I can't expense that. You know, you're constantly moving those numbers around and figuring out, you know, really what the present need, the immediate need of your business is. The one that's screaming in your ear is like, yeah, you need to reduce all your expenses. Well, then, you know, that's when I'm going to hold off on my marketing for a little while, because, you know, this engine's running, it's going pretty good. I need to take as much profit as I can right now. So you're constantly looking for the feedback and the different points within the metrics or the different tools that you have to look at the health of your business and trying to pull that information from.
Do you think there's too much government regulation in organic in your industry right now?
I think that there's a lot of hurdles to do business. I think that between, you know, the layers of city government, state government, federal government, that, you know, there's a lot of licenses and permits, and, you know, I mean, I think that taxes are a necessary evil, you know, a lot of times, and that I'm happy to pay my fair share and do what I can, but I feel like in the last few years that there's been a few more layers, you know, of regulation or tax burden that's, that hurts. It hurts small businesses, and that's the sentiment that I've heard from a lot of other small local businesses as well. Is like, you know, you can increase our licensing fees 200 or 300% in a year, but what are we getting in return, right? What is that going towards? I mean, I want to see. Yeah, I want to know that, oh, okay, I'm doing that. That means that my neighbor across the street is getting some additional benefit, or having their tax burden relieved in some way, or, you know, there's some additional service that I'm paying for, right? That's really going to benefit my business or me or the community. But I don't, you know, I think that there's that communication or that information gap. You know, it's like, I don't know why I'm paying more. Just tell me why, and maybe I'll be okay with it. Yeah. Yes.
I wonder if you mentioned that you had, when you started out, I guess 2 other business partners. I wonder if you could talk about how that came to be and how you would approach that differently now.
Yeah, I use that term partner loosely, in the sense that there was nothing formal that brought them into the ownership of the business. And I would try to do that differently. I would maybe, after a couple years of the relationship that we had, where they were managers, employees, but I thought it was a really, it was a harmonious, very mutually beneficial arrangement. Got the sense like they're uneasy, they're feeling the need to go out on their own and do their own thing, and I tried really hard to offer them, put something in front of them that would say, look, let's formalize this. I don't want, this doesn't need to be 100% me, especially because it's farming and it's not like, again, I'm not getting rich off of this. But at that point, I think it was just too hard to wrap our heads around and get, to get anywhere with that idea. It kept coming back to questions about how our decision's going to get made, perceptions that we're ultimately still going to be the ones in charge, but I think that if I'd had if I had it to do over again, I would probably go into that because that was the condition. The precondition was we're only gonna buy this farm if we have this couple in particular that's gonna help us run it. I know we can't do both of these things, but I would have said, no, let's formalize this. Let's make them equal partners in this, and I think we would have had a better chance at keeping that partnership or that relationship going. Definitely one of the things, knowing again, what your risk level is, whether you're going to tolerate can we still exist without these people, or maybe not, So from the get-go, let's just get them, much easier to figure all that stuff out at the beginning than try to go back to it, revisit it later down the road and say, oh, well, now we have this thing that has a personality and that has a bunch of assets and liabilities, and now we need to codify this relationship and somehow share in both the risks and the rewards.
So lessons learned, would you ever go into partnership again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think, no, that's what I was trying to say is I would have gone into the partnership if there had been a more contractual, formal arrangement. And I think that would have served me better than not doing that. But I didn't, at the time, it didn't really occur to me I need to do this now for, some future unforeseen reason. But it's, the upside is that they've started their own farm, and they're now part of this broader, community, and we have, another enterprise in the area, in the county, that's doing the work that I think needs to be done, and that that there's some larger benefit than just what would have accrued to me.
Do you buy produce from them for distribution?
I do, yeah.
See, the farming ecosystem to me is more of a kumbaya type thing. Everybody loves each other and everybody wants to take care of each other. But in corporate America, it's just strike when the iron's hot. If he's down, kick him again. If he's not moving, kick him again. Make sure he's not moving.
Yeah. Well, how does that sit with you, Tom? You like that?
When I was in my 20s, I loved it.
Yeah.
That's because that's how you get the money, right?
Yeah.
Now, as I get older, I don't like it because it's it happens You know, it's not a good feeling, you're right, and that's why I want to bring that dynamic view into here, to really let people know that there is a different ecosystem in the business.
Well, it's a worldview, right? It's your outlook, and whether it's all zero sum,
Yep.
or whether we can actually cooperate and both get what we want without winner take all, loser go home, and or worse, not go home.
Right.
When you're you're basically a distributor, right?
Yeah.
But you have another thing, but I'm just wondering, like, how do you determine what's a good buying point from them? And like, do you have different prices that you buy from different farmers, or is it just a set price? And like, how do you basically challenge those farmers and be like, hey, I'm gonna buy yours for less or more or whatever than these guys who want to buy yours? So like, how do you set that up?
Yeah, well, let me take a stab at that through an anecdote. The same farmer, much bigger than we are, selling into the larger marketplace. So he's got, contracts or commitments from all of the major chains. And in the middle of the season, his lettuce is going for $25 a case, let's say. And there's only a couple months out of the year, right, where we're growing lettuce at all, and that we can actually divert the purchasing from California, right? Because that's where the lettuce is grown the other 10 months out of the year. And their markets fluctuate, right, with weather and supply, demand, forces at work. And he told me that that the majority of his customers were fine. Like 25, let's just set the price at the beginning of the season. We know there's going to be some variances in the California market, but let's just tune it out, right? And let's just stick with the local thing for the summer. And all but one customer was fine with that. But their one customer was like, well, California's at 24, so you need to go to 24 a case. He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I mean, we're small, right? We're working with a lot of farmers who aren't competing with California markets. So we have, somewhat of a unique relationship, but that's much more my philosophy and approach, and how we take on that issue is, look, the farmer knows what their costs are and what they need to sell it at, and I'm not really in a good, I just wouldn't want to do that. I'm not going to beat up the farmer and say, oh, well, your neighbor's selling it for, $2 less, so I'm going to need you to go $3 less, or else you lose the sale. No, it's because, next year I want them to feel good about that relationship and to keep growing for us. I mean, we're losing, not only a lot of farmers to old age and other factors. I mean, so in the end, I mean, we're going to lose product. We're going to have shortages, and I'm making a long-term, commitment or investment in those growers that I do have supplying me, and that ultimately that they'll want to sell to me first in the future. That's my bet.
And California won't be able to produce in another 10, 15, 20 years. Just not enough water there left. Pacific Northwest is the only really region in the West that has enough water for agriculture, right? Long term.
Yeah. Well, I think as of last week, climate change isn't a real thing anymore. So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Hey, time is up. Hey, Dan, I wanted to thank you for coming out here.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate your your insight